With the civilian death toll from Israel's bombing of Gaza continuing to rise, calls for accountability have been growing louder.
This isn't, an electric toaster that takes the same amount of time to have your morning toast in every situation. It's a function of evidence and facts and a number of different issues.
But it's been 4 months.
I have questioned the judges in my applications and in other filings before the court to deal with this expeditiously. I am acutely aware that every day people are suffering.
The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court tells us why he believes that justice will be served. Hello, I'm Rida Fakhri. Welcome to Bigger Than Five. Today we confront a critical issue shaping international justice: accountability for war crimes in Gaza. The prosecutor of the ICC, Karim Khan, has taken the bold step of seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense minister. The charges: war crimes and crimes against humanity committed during Israel's assault on Gaza. Now, as the Israeli government challenges the ICC's authority, we ask, is international law applied equally, or are some states immune from accountability? In May, Karim Khan asked the ICC to issue arrest warrants for Israeli officials, including the Prime Minister, as well as senior Hamas leaders, for suspected war crimes and crimes against humanity. Khan said there was credible evidence that the Israeli officials had carried out crimes, including starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population, and extermination. He also said the Hamas officials were suspected of crimes including hostage-taking, rape and sexual violence, and torture. In August, Karim Khan's office urged the court to take action urgently, saying that it was, quote, settled law that the court has jurisdiction in this situation. But last month, Israel submitted an official challenge to the ICC's jurisdiction, and the court has yet to issue any arrest warrants. I traveled to New York to meet Prosecutor Khan on the margins of the United Nations General Assembly. Prosecutor Khan, you are here at the United Nations General Assembly as global leaders meet to discuss some of the world's crises. How do you view the role of the International Criminal Court within the global context of international justice and international law?
I think it's an essential one. People around the world are suffering. If your viewers just cast their mind on the map of the world, look what is happening in Afghanistan, look what's happening in the Philippines, in the past for crimes. Look at the plight of the Rohingya. Look what's happening in Ukraine. Look what's happening in Palestine and Israel. Look at Sudan, it's on fire, and Libya. People, children are crying. People are mourning the loss of parents, and people around the world are fed up of the promises of never again, the promises, the incantations of the equal application of the law, the importance of the Charter, and these fundamental imperatives that should guide human conduct, when they see in too many cases of the world people are tearing them up, trampling on them, and actually acting with impunity. And it's in that context that the ICC operates. It's not political, it's dealing with genocide, war crimes and crimes against humanity. And we have to do our job, and we need support from states to implement decisions that are made by judges.
You just said it's not political, but by you being here at the UN General Assembly, when so many world leaders are gathered, given your key role is to investigate some of the world's most egregious war crimes, does it help to be here, given the perceptions that your role may be seen as somewhat political?
I think it's essential to be here because we have 124 state parties that sign up to the International Criminal Court, soon to be 125 because President Zelensky has also committed and has signed the documents to become a state party. And these states gave birth to something. They gave birth to a court and a statute, and the result of it are the judges and the prosecution that has to be given the space to do their job. But states ultimately are the guardians, they're the parents, and they have to cooperate with the court. We need their support. And also, we have every right to expect that all states honour their international commitments. And we need to partner with non-state parties as well.
But in your role as ICC prosecutor, how do you balance the demands for justice and accountability with the stark realities of international diplomacy and politics?
By making sure our compass is not disturbed by politics. Our compass is the rule of law. The statute is written in terms of what constitute criminal conduct. We have a duty to investigate incriminating and exonerating evidence equally, and the magnetic disturbance of noise, of politics, of division, of the dysfunctional nature of the Security Council must be put into the background. We need noise-cancelling headphones and make sure that we pursue the law in cases where we have jurisdiction, and we're limited by the jurisdiction we have. But where we have jurisdiction, we have an obligation to try to make sure that law is felt by people who have nothing else.
But we often hear complaints by people in the global south that the law isn't applied fairly, that it is far too often selective. The president of South Africa said international law cannot be applied selectively, that no one state is more equal than any other. But isn't that the reality that you, as ICC prosecutor, let's face it, operate within?
I had a very good meeting with the president of South Africa in UNGA, and it is correct that international law is a work in progress. There has been slavery that has blighted humanity. There's been colonialism that has blighted humanity. And we have many examples where the Charter has been disregarded when it conflicts with the political interests of individuals or the perceived national interests of states. But that is not an argument for us to be demoralized.
But let's be honest, it's just 5 states, a handful of states and their allies that are often above the law.
Well, the point is nobody's above the law. In terms of, we have 2 permanent members of the Security Council that are state parties to the International Criminal Court. What we have to do is not give false promises, not speak platitudes, but to show by our action that we are blind to power, we're blind to the interests of different individuals or different states.
But are you blind to power, though, Prosecutor Khan? Because for too long, there's been heavy criticisms directed at the ICC for exclusively targeting certain regions and certain leaders from certain countries. Isn't that the reality, that for too long, the ICC has simply gone after African leaders and President Putin of Russia? But do you ever successfully prosecute cases that have to do with Western nations and their allies?
Well, I started my term in June 2021 as prosecutor, and I made it clear that I was trying to reform the office. I was trying to make sure it was more effective. I've done more defense cases as defense counsel, I think, than anybody else in the International Criminal Court. So I've seen what it's like from both sides of the courtroom, and I was committed to making sure the office that I now lead is fit for purpose and effective. I think the evidence of that, or the confidence that we are building, is a work in progress. It requires humility, it requires patience, and also determination not to take too long. So we're trying to build partnerships all over the world, united by one common cause, which is not power, but people. And it's the obligation that all people are equal under God.
Sure, but that's not the wide-held perception, even though, in fairness to you, you did take an unprecedented step by seeking an arrest warrant for the Prime Minister of Israel and others, something that none of your predecessors have done. We heard at UNGA from the President of Turkey, who said that, quote, Netanyahu must be stopped by an alliance of humanity, just as Hitler was stopped 70 years ago. What will it take, in your opinion, to bring Netanyahu to justice, given the stark reality that we've been talking about?
Well, the first thing, as an officer of the court, my first responsibility is to the law. I have submitted applications to the judges of the International Criminal Court. I will not get ahead of myself. Those are applications that must be determined by judges. I'm not going to engage in comparisons. This is something that presidents and politicians have the luxury to do. I need to make sure that at all times I'm independent, I'm impartial and objective. And in terms of that particular situation, I've done my part at the moment. We're investigating the whole situation. It's not stopped. It's not stalled. We're not treading water. But there are issues that judges must decide, and I won't comment further on that.
But it did take you almost 8 months to take that step, despite the scale of glaring violations in Gaza and elsewhere. Why did it take so long? How much pressure were you under not to take that step?
You see, it's a very interesting question, because at the same time you put it in those terms, others are saying, why was it so quick? Because we see different investigations over the history of the International Criminal Court have taken different amounts of time.
But Palestinian victims won't say, why was it so quick?
But I'm telling you what my audience is the world at the moment, and my audience is trying to explain what we're doing. It took 1 year to submit applications in the Russia situation from 2022 when Russian Federation entered the territory of Ukraine. They made applications. Ukraine had accepted the jurisdiction of the court in 2014. But I don't have the luxury. It's very important for your viewers to understand this. I don't have the luxury to speak lightly. I'm not an NGO. I'm the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, and we need evidence. It's a forensic process. One needs to look what's happened, check it's authentic, check it's truthful, whether it's witness evidence, satellite evidence, other types of real evidence, and then to put it together in terms of individual responsibility. We don't deal with the responsibility of states. That's the job, that's the purview of the International Court of Justice. We deal with individuals. So for victims who are living around the world, a day is too long. But we have to work based upon evidence, and I think we're doing that, and we've done that so far.
Is justice delayed, justice denied? Because if you compare the situation in Ukraine, Russia with Gaza and Israel, it took the ICC judges only 3 weeks to issue those arrest warrants for President Putin. Are you surprised that they still haven't done the same in the case of Israel? Would you have expected them to have acted earlier?
Every case is different. This isn't, an electric toaster that takes the same amount of time to have your morning toast in every situation. It's a function of evidence and facts and a number of different issues.
But it's been 4 months.
I have requested the judges in my applications and in other filings before the court to deal with this expeditiously. I am acutely aware that every day people are suffering, whether they are the Israelis who have their families taken as hostages, or whether that's people that are burying their loved ones in Gaza or the West Bank. They want justice. But I would put it differently. Justice is better as soon as possible, which is why we're trying to work at the speed of relevance. But people should not think that they can run down the clock. We have seen so many examples in which justice was expected, but people thought it would never be achieved. And that's the example of Milosevic or President Charles Taylor or Karadzic or Mladic, in which, in the end, people saw the inside of a courtroom. That must apply in all our situations. At this moment, certain warrants have been issued in a variety of situations in Palestine. They're before the judges, and I simply can't comment further on that because I respect my role as prosecutor and I respect the role of judges, and we must give them the time to do their work. And I'm sure that they will be making every effort to make whatever decision they think is appropriate as soon as possible.
How long will it take? Days? Weeks?
I have no idea.
Months?
Your guess is as good as mine. And if you have a crystal ball, please give me the answer.
You said to the judges that they should act with the utmost urgency. Are you surprised that they still haven't?
I'm an officer of the court. The judges have their job to do. I've done mine. I'm doing it because the allegations are not ending. They're continuing. And I expect the judges who have been elected by states to take their responsibilities very seriously, and I believe, inshallah, they will.
On the day you announced your application for arrest warrants, on the 20th of May, you said this, quote, "If we do not demonstrate our willingness to apply the law equally, if it is seen as being applied selectively, we will be creating the conditions for its collapse." Haven't we already seen its collapse with the unwillingness of the world's Western democracies to apply the law equally? We know that a few countries challenged your application.
I think you're very pessimistic.
But isn't that the reality?
I think you're very pessimistic. I don't think so. And, one has seen also in terms of a position on support of the court, not just Ireland or Norway or Spain, but so many other countries as well have said that they will respect the institutions that have been created, of which the International Criminal Court is one. Can we collectively do better? The answer, of course, is yes. Do victims deserve more? Absolutely. But I'm not quite as pessimistic, because also the context is important. We've heard a lot, particularly since the invasion, the aggression by the Russian Federation in Ukraine, about a rules-based system. So this is a moment of truth.
The rules-based order, which we often hear Western powers talk about, is that compatible with respect for international law and international humanitarian law?
Well, it depends on what's one's definition. What we have is public international law. We have treaties that give rise to obligations. We have the UN Charter that every member state of the United Nations is supposed to uphold. We have customary international law. This is the 75th anniversary of the Geneva Conventions. This is a moment of truth. Either we cling to the law or we have nothing else to cling on to.
We have the law, but the problem is the implementation of the law in a way that isn't selective. Do you hold certain powerful countries responsible for not upholding the law across the board?
I don't have jurisdiction for countries. We have criminal jurisdiction for individuals. If your question is more properly put, can states do better? Yes, many states can do a lot better, not only in terms of the International Criminal Court, but going back to the UN Charter. Every state who is a member of the United Nations, not only state parties to the ICC, must try to make sure that the architecture that they have built since the Second World War, whether it's the United Nations or specialized agencies or the International Criminal Court, means something. And we don't have so much time. We need to realize the clock is ticking, and the window of building confidence is not finite.
You mentioned confidence and the need to build confidence, but from the victims in Gaza to now the victims of potential war crimes in Lebanon, do you feel that the fact that the ICC hasn't to date issued arrest warrants for the Prime Minister of Israel may have emboldened him and driven him to take the actions he has in Lebanon?
You know, it's very easy to try to say the UN is failing. The ICC could do better. And I'm not defensive. I can do better personally. The office can do better. The ICC can do better. But it's very important for your viewers to hear the truth, that we are the child of states. The United Nations was created by states. And I think that requires partnership, and it requires collective effort to do better, and also states to look past the short-term agendas that have plagued humanity since throughout history, and particularly since the Second World War, and be guided by something loftier and more noble, which is the rights of humanity at large.
Let's take the case of Israel. How difficult is it for you to enforce any arrest warrants for Israeli leaders if countries like Israel do not wish to cooperate?
The judges have to make certain decisions. But irrespective of the situation that we are dealing with, the power to arrest is not with the office. States have the power to arrest. I don't have an army. I don't have special forces. I don't have my own police force. I have my investigators. I have my analysts, and I have my lawyers and other colleagues. The best example can be what has happened. There are so many examples. Hissène Habré, who was the president of Chad, who was tried and convicted in the courts of Senegal, which was an African Union initiative. Milosevic, president of Serbia. Karadzic, Mladic, Jean Kambanda of Rwanda, Kip Simpin of Cambodia, former President Charles Taylor. He was charged by the Special Court of Sierra Leone when he was still president in Monrovia. People thought it was a fool's errand, that these courts were feeble, that they were impotent, and that there would never be any prospect of accountability. But one of the aspects of Nuremberg, and it's a principle not only in the Rome Statute, but of customary international law, is that there is no statute of limitations for war crimes. So when a judge in any situation decides that there is a warrant for that person's arrest, it doesn't go away unless a judge changes his or her mind, or the chamber changes their mind based upon either death of the individual or any new factors that is presented by the prosecution. So my own view really is that law is not as strong as maybe many of us want, but it's not as weak as many people think. And it requires this collective effort not to see only the weaknesses, but try to make it stronger, which requires partnerships.
And you took a bold, courageous step by seeking an arrest warrant in the case of Gaza. How difficult was it for you on a personal level to take that step?
No, I do my job. Yes, there's noise and there's threats and there's many interests, but being a lawyer in any system, prosecution, defense, victims, or a judge, it can't be for the faint-hearted. It can't be that you want to win a popularity contest. One will fail abysmally. One needs to view what the law is, what the evidence is, and go where the evidence leads. And it's a function of discipline and professional ethics.
You said you came under intense pressure by some global leaders that have remained unnamed. Were you directly threatened by Western leaders, by leaders from the United States, from Europe? Can you expand on what kind of harassment and threats you faced?
No, I don't choose to mention that at the moment, but I think things that are already in the public domain, there have been correspondence and letters that have already become public. One can see in terms of the daily discourse in the international media between different leaders and regions and countries that this is, for some reason, some cases are more difficult than others. And as I said, these are the moments when the independence of the judiciary, the independence of a court and of a prosecutor is absolutely necessary. And luckily we have very courageous men and women of the office that are trying with insufficient resources, with feeling very acutely the demands of victims around the world for progress, to be seen, the invisible to be seen, the marginalized to be put at the center of conversations. We are doing our best to do our job.
Yet, the Prime Minister of Israel accused you of, quote, pure anti-Semitism, saying it was a moral disgrace of the highest order for you to seek an arrest warrant for him. How do you react to this type of statement?
You know, there's a warrant against me from the Russian Federation for doing my job. There is criticism from many quarters. And as I said, for me, I'm fortunate that is bigger than a particular moment. You're a custodian of something bigger than yourself, which is justice, and you have some fear of God, that you try your best, that at that moment when you leave, you can feel you've done your best. And those tropes of anti-Semitism are bandied around all the time, and I know who I am.
Do you feel there's some racism?
I don't need to put labels on it, because I know, as I've said, the first time I went to a synagogue was with my late father when I was about 6. I was invited by the Royal Wallenberg Center to give the second Elie Wiesel lecture. He was a great Jew. He was a Nobel Peace Prize winner. I gave it in Ottawa last year, just a few months before October the 7th. I don't think an anti-Semite would be invited to such an event. The simple truth is that on a personal level, you have to love humanity. You have to care for people, and irrespective of the color of skin or the religion, the confession, we need to feel very acutely the people whose stories you tell. They could be our children, they could be our parents, they could be our brothers and sisters. And if we felt that compassion, then half of this, or 90% of this, or maybe all of these tragedies we see around the world would not take place, because we'd be frozen in fright, we'd be frozen in terror, that there but for the grace of God goes I.
I want to ask you about the argument Israel has made, saying that there is the founding principle of the ICC, which is complementarity. According to this, the court should not step in unless a state is unwilling or unable to genuinely carry out a prosecution. Do you believe that Israeli courts can genuinely carry out a prosecution or investigation of their crimes?
Well, complementarity is a foundational principle of the Rome Statute. I've said repeatedly, if states step up, I will step out. But unfortunately, there's been no accountability in Palestine conducted by the military tribunals in Israel, and certainly not in Gaza. And so, unfortunately, we were compelled to move forward with the applications we did. But I welcome any state. I think it's right. If you have arguments, raise them in court. But I will respond to that particular filing with the judges, and I won't say more.
That was ICC Prosecutor Karim Khan speaking to me in New York. Now, as we've just heard from the ICC Prosecutor, securing accountability for the victims in Gaza remains both complicated and elusive. While Khan insists the passage of time will not weaken the pursuit of justice, can we really expect action? It's clear powerful political actors will do what they can to stop the wheels of justice. From me, Rida Fakhri, and the Bigger Than 5 team, thank you for watching.